Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Valdene Reddy. She's the director of capital markets with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Valdene, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Good evening, Jill. Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, and give us an overview of South Africa's economic performance and COVID-19 recovery.
Yes, so we've had a pretty resilient recovery. We are in the wave now where we are looking at a fourth wave, but we've had a pretty decent catch-up phase. We were slow to start in the vaccine program, but we've had a decent catch-up phase for the second half of the year. And are actually sitting at a situation now where we have good supply of the vaccine and really just trying to encourage and muster up vaccine demand and trying to get more of our population vaccinated. But we've had a decent catch up in the second half of the year. And what we're watching now and we're monitoring quite closely is, even though we're in this fourth wave with pretty high and steep numbers on this new COVID variant, we're watching the death rate and hospitalization a little bit more manageable. So a lot of the key epidemiologists in South Africa are citing that hopefully this is the turn of something that is a pandemic becoming endemic. So we're very hopeful on that regard.
Are you seeing interest from global companies to consider a secondary listing in South Africa?
So the capital raise market and secondary listing market in South Africa has been slow. It's not necessarily related to South Africa. We've seen it actually on a global arena where just general listings has been difficult markets, whether it was from the European markets, I think bar probably the US markets that I've seen that buoyancy, and some of the Asian markets. But what we are seeing is we're seeing decent demand where people are looking to grow and access capital, whether it's in the listed or unlisted space, to really solidify the growth nodes. Now, post-COVID, which I think is something really prominent in South Africa, but will be the same in many developing markets, is a massive focus to getting your SME, your small and medium enterprises scaled up to contribute to economic growth, as well as job creation, as well as infrastructure spend. You know, we still pretty much an emerging market, so there's a high demand to get our economy going through key infrastructure projects. So those are catalysts for focus for really the capital formation in our market. And so while we're not seeing that huge stimuli in the listed market in secondary listings or new capital raises, we're still seeing that growth in specific growth nodes in different marketplaces.
Right. Let's talk about specific sectors, including renewable energy, that are available to investors.
So there's been a big focus on our state-owned enterprises, and the largest one in South Africa is Eskom, which is our biggest energy producer for the country, and we're still very much a coal-dependent economy. But what we saw was a major shift in that space is that there's the proposed restructure of Eskom, which was very necessary for the longevity. But in that, we've also seen our government open up key policy reforms to allow independent power producers come up to support that grid. And where we're seeing that growth is really in the renewable energy space. Now, South Africa as an emerging market will have to focus on a just transition. It's not an easy shift for us, but the renewable energy space will prove a vibrant future for us, especially with now opening up the marketplace to different power producers, as well as for just the natural resources we hold as a country and as a continent to support a renewable strategy. So we see a lot of growth potential, and we are really seeing that growth node in the renewable energy space.
And what about the level of interest in the South African bond and equity market from international investors?
Yes, so that's very cyclical, and we've seen it ebb and flow. In the equities market, we've seen a net foreign selling in our equities market, and that has been structurally for the past 3 to 4 years, a number of bespoke macro and political issues in our country, as well as just South Africa's weighting decrease in key indices such as the MSCI index, as China or other emerging markets grew scale, you know, China or Argentina or Saudi Arabia. In the bond market, on the other hand, despite having a credit downgrade last year in South Africa, where we saw a knee jerk to some of the key global bond indices, we've actually seen net inflows in the bonds market this year, really based on a yield play. So South Africa boasts some really decent interest rates, especially relative to other developed markets where people are actually in interest rate cycles where they're in low to even cutting And so South Africa, actually on an absolute basis, where people are hungry for yield and looking for decent returns, has seen a net interest from foreigners in our bond market.
All right, Valdene, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Jill.